Hi guys, Josh here again from VIP Airsoft. Today I'm actually not doing a rail system video or anything about any external stuff. Today I'm actually going to do some internals. We're going to talk about what's inside the gearbox, what makes it tick, what actually makes my gun go boom. As I say, we get that question a lot. Oh, my gun's broken, what's going on with it? Well, we say it's locked up. Well, what does that mean? Today we're going to kind of explain what that means, not just that question in particular, but multiple questions upon why is my gun not working, what's wrong with it. So we're going to go ahead and do that. First things first, I'm going to disassemble it, and we're going to use one of our rental guns because, you know, they're beasts, as you've seen in the torture tests we've done with them. So with further ado, we're going to jump in this. So first things first, what we're going to do on the external takedown is I'm going to pull these wires out because we kind of need those out, otherwise we're not getting anywhere. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take my hammer and my punch. I'm going to hit that out, pop that out there, and then on our G&Gs here they just slide forward. You kind of got to watch the dust cover, but slide out. Alright, we're done with the upper, we don't need it anymore. Next thing, I like to take out the magazine release, get that out of here. And again, I'm just going to set all the extra parts we don't need to worry about to the side here. This video is strictly internal, but I'm going to show you the takedown just because I want you to see it. Next thing, grab an Allen key set. We're going to pull out this bottom grip here. And get the top one. Alright, gotta get the motor, connectors off, motor comes out. Sticking with the motor still, take my screwdriver. This is my longest screwdriver I own, so you gotta get that in here. You don't need the long one for this, but I am gonna need it for the stock. And bear with me guys, I do have a little bit of a cough, so if I start coughing, I apologize. Alright, grips out. Next thing is stock, and it's kind of hard to see down in here, but there's a long Phillips head, and got it. And as you guys can see, you could have seen even when I started pulling the upper off, that's the gearbox shell itself. Again, we only work on guns that are made of metal on the gearbox shell. That's one thing that we are very, very strict on because we don't want to be working on something that's just going to break again for you guys because it's not worth your money and we don't want to do that to you. This is the next part we're going to do is we're going to pop out this center body pin here, right there. Tap that out. Tap the center body pin out. And that is it on the pins. Usually there is a rear one, but sometimes they fall out or we just don't have it in this one. So I'm going to slide it out. Comes out pretty easy. And as you can see, the gearbox is actually pretty dirty on the outside. Causes of that is just the grease and just use. So this is the first thing we're coming to. So you see these top screws, they're kind of coming undone. And actually on this gearbox, you can see there's a crack. So if someone ever says, hey, I need a new gearbox, mine cracked. That's what they're talking about. What happens is it eventually will fracture. These rentals are used so much. So for a crack like this, it's very common. We replace gearbox shells quite a bit. To prevent that, there's a few items you could purchase. One would be a sorbo pad. What that is a pad that sits on the inside of the cylinder head, which being that right there, and it protects it and it helps out a little bit. There is some more teching involved with that, and then you also want to make sure everything's tightened down. So why don't I just get in here, pull these apart. Whoop, losing screws here. I'm going to pull this apart, and then I can show you the gearbox internals. Now with the G&G gearbox, it is a little bit different, and they're the only ones that actually have this that I know of, that I'm thinking of right now. Their screws are on the opposite side of where you're going to open it. If you open the gearbox in this position, all the parts are going to fall out, and it's going to be a pain in the butt. The gears will fall out, all that stuff will happen. Alright. Alrighty, so on the outside here, before I flip it open, kind of the things you see the bushings. G&G uses brass bushings. Right here we have the selector plate. There's a selector plate spring. A little piece, silver piece, is the cutoff lever. I'll show you that on the inside. And we have obviously the trigger and the mechanical safety right here. This actually allows it, when it goes into safe, it actually does do safe. When you pull it back, and this would be about the semi position and then full auto. As you watch the cutoff lever, so that would be semi and full auto. That's how you know full auto, because and once I get in there, I'll kind of show you and see the dynamics of it. All right, let me move my Allen keys out of the way because we don't need them anymore. I'm going to flip this gearbox over, and actually this piece is going to come out. So as you can see, the crack that happens right there, it's common. It happens on the G&Gs. Excuse me, guys. It happens on the G&Gs. It's something that does just occur. We just place the shell when that does happen. All right, so with that out of the way, we're going to flip it here. Now, what I'm going to do is, I don't think you guys can see it on there, but right there, that's what we call the anti-reversal latch. What that does is it prevents the reversing of the gearbox when the gun is fired. Now, with this gearbox, it's actually held back a little bit, so there's a little bit of tension. So what I'm going to do is try and get my pick underneath there and release the gears. If you hear that sound, I'm just releasing the tension so that when I pull this off, it doesn't fly everywhere and doesn't cause issues. Alrighty. Now for you people who are like, I don't know what's going on here. This is the main internal workings of the gearbox. So, pretty basic. I'm going to use my pick and kind of explain. So the way the gearbox works is you have the motor that'll sit down here. It pushes up against this gear here. This gear, as well as this one and this one. And the names of those gears are the sector, the spur, and the bevel. I hope I got that right, because sometimes I get them mixed up. But basically, it pushes up against this gear, and it spins. And as it spins, the sector gear, which is off its track a little bit, will spin, and it will contact with the piston. This is the piston right here. Now, G&G is notorious for not breaking pistons. We swear they're made out of carbon fiber, because they are the strongest pistons we have seen out of a stock gun in a very, very long time, and they work great. So it contacts with the piston, and the piston is under pressure by the spring. And as the spring comes back, it comes back and it compresses it, and it sets on the spring guide right here. And as it comes back, it'll pull, 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 pull. And if these gears would cooperate with me, gets to a certain point, it will actually release. So let me lift this up out of here and kind of show you. So move all this stuff. And I'll go over what these are in a minute. As this comes back, it goes to a certain point, and the piston is still under pressure and it's being pulled by these gears. Gets to a point, and then it releases. And as it releases, it goes through the cylinder and hits the cylinder head, and on top of the piston, there's the piston head. So with these parts right here, these basically sum up what the gearbox is. So I'll set these back in here so you guys can kind of see where it's setting. And then put that back on there. I'm not going to put the spring on the, again, sorry, I forgot to mention, this is the tappet plate. The tappet plate is what moves the nozzle back as the gears go. So let me pull the anti-reversal latch out and grab the anti-reversal latch spring so that we can kind of demonstrate how that goes. So if you see real quick, again, as you watch, this gear, the gears will spin. Pull, 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 pull. Coming back, it's pulling back. It's actually starting to pull the gears, it's starting to pull the piston. If you watch, this nub right here pulls back the tappet plate, comes back, boom, 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 and then it releases. It's going to keep going, and it releases, and everything goes forward. Now that you've seen kind of how it works, people have questions upon, like, okay, so my gun's not feeding. Well, if your gun isn't feeding, what can happen is the tappet plate itself can break off right here or up here. Most commonly, it's right back here. So if the tappet plate breaks off, then that would be why it's not feeding. Or it could be as simple as the spring itself could break. The spring sits right here and hooks up to the front. So with that, and that hooks up right here, which actually it keeps falling out, so we're not going to worry about that. So that happens. Some people say, well, my piston broke. Well, what happens on your piston when it breaks is those teeth right here, those will break. And yeah, they're plastic, so they have wear on them. The nice thing, like I said, on the G&Gs is they last for a very long time. Under stock use, they work great. But if you're wanting a better piston, you're spending about $20 for a better piston. This one's a half tooth, but normally we have the full metal tooth ones. So it's going to be a full rack just like this one. So it's going to be the same thing, but they're all going to be metal. Now, when you switch to a metal tooth, a lot of people's concerns is, well, I'm going to break my gears. Not necessarily. If as long as everything is shimmed right, everything is working, it's not working right, it's not going to be a problem. Another problem that people say is, well, I broke a gear. Yeah, it happens. Again, G&G, they've seemed to somehow not break their gears very much. They're the strongest stock gears we've seen in a very long time as well. Nice thing is, and one of those teeth will just pop off and they'll break off and it won't be there. And if that's the case, you may have to replace the gear set. Good gear set is about $50. Well, we sell some gear sets here. We sell some of the super shooters or the SHS ones. They work pretty good. Personally, if you're going to get a gear set, I recommend the Lonex ones or the Bravo ones. They work really well. Try if you're looking at more expensive gear sets and saying, oh, well, this is a $100 gear set, it must be great. Not all the time, so just keep that in mind. Another thing that people have an issue sometimes with is, well, I'm losing air. I'm only getting, my gun when I got it was shooting 300 FPS, and now it's only shooting 200. Well, if that happens, there's a few things that may be the problem. So I'm going to pull out the cylinder and air seal stuff out real quick. So we have the three parts, the nozzle, the cylinder head, and the cylinder. As well as that is the piston head. There's another piece there that sets, like I said, sits on top of the piston. So the three pieces that you may need to replace would be the cylinder head. This is the Lonex Bravo one. Great cylinder head, gives you nice air compression. Another one that maybe, if you're having an issue, like the O-ring on here, if you see that, it has an O-ring. That O-ring, over time, with wear inside the cylinder, will actually shrink a little bit, and you may lose some air seal. Quick thing that we do for this, actually, is we put it over the cylinder, heat it up. So as you heat it up, it will expand, and it will retain this shape, and we put it back on there. And once we put it back on, it may fix the issue, and that's all you need. If you're wanting a better one, the one on the G&Gs is plastic. This is a metal. This has a double O-ring on it. And again, you see one there and one there. So this is, you're kind of seeing the difference in the better of the parts. So if we were to replace these two parts, you're looking at $14.95 and $21.95. So you're looking at not too much of an expense for some better parts. I've used both of these parts before, love them, they work great. And then another thing you may need to replace would be the nozzle. On the nozzle, this one doesn't have an O-ring in here. I believe this one is a double O-ring, so on the inside there will be an O-ring, and it helps with air compression. Oh, excuse me. So, as you guys see, like with just the guns, I mean, they're not very complicated. I mean, it looks like a lot if this is your first time ever seeing the inside of a Gearbox. But the nice thing about it is that these parts aren't that expensive in the scheme of things. If you know how to work on the gun yourself, you save quite a bit. If you don't, we'll gladly do it for you. When I open up a Gearbox, I clean everything. As you can tell, this is dirty. It's disgusting. I clean it and re-oil it and re-grease it. But that's just some of the parts with it. I'm going to pull this completely apart so you guys can see all of the parts. Move my tools out of the way a little bit for you guys. And then I'm just going to go over all the parts again, just kind of show you what they do. We'll reassemble it, get it back together, and then we'll be all set and show you guys. So as I pull this out, I'm pulling out the trigger right now. Earlier I mentioned shimming, and I'm sorry guys if I'm going a little too fast. Just wanted to show you, this is a shim. What shims do, and they have pretty much the most basic job ever, they control height of the gears. Now, if a shimming is too tight, what that means is the gears won't move freely. And the issue with that is it may not fire. If the shimming is too loose, the gears may move too much, and it can cause uneven wear in certain spots. So keep that in mind with it. Now shimming, depending who you are, you shim a little bit different. And that's another video, so we'll worry about that. Just keep in mind, make sure the gears move freely whenever you're assembling the gearbox. Alright, so I'm pulling this back off here, and one of the bushings came off, but we're just going to leave it off. We don't need to worry about it. So now I'm going to pull out the wiring harness. And this is another issue people have, and this is actually the most common issue, in my opinion, of problem is what we call trigger contacts burning out. Now, a way to tell when trigger contacts are burning out is, if you remember in the rental video when Nate was doing the test, he burned out the trigger contacts. Now, it's not Nate's fault. It happens. or he thought he did. I'm not 100% sure if that's what it was. We'd have to double check back that. But basically what happens is with constant use with a battery, there's a buildup of material on these. And as you see right here, there's a buildup of what it looks like to be metal shavings. Now what happens is these trigger contacts get too much gunk on them. And with there being so much gunk and garbage on it, it won't complete the circuit. So as you push this together, it would cycle. Now, if these trigger contacts are too far apart, or again, if they're dirty, it won't cycle correctly. So again, that's another issue that happens is trigger contacts. Another thing that people say, oh, my trigger spring broke or my shuttle spring broke. This is your shuttle spring. It sets on top of the trigger shuttle just like so. And if that breaks, yeah, you have to replace it. The way that may be confused for being a trigger contacts because you just get no power. It happens. Another thing that may break is the trigger spring. Sits behind the trigger right here, this spring, and that spring just snaps. You replace it. Way you can tell if your trigger spring is broken, when you pull it on semi, you may have to push the trigger back with your other finger, and then you go to full auto and be fine. So that's another way to tell. All right, so we got the tappet plate. Let me just get all my parts in order here. Oh, another thing for you guys, if you're kind of watching this to put it back together, this cylinder port. Now, a cylinder port, what it does is it releases the maximum amount of air out of the gun, which is so once you fire it, the cylinder port really coincides with the barrel length. So let me grab the outer barrel. I'm sorry, the inner barrel. Wow. All right. So, all right. If you see the length of this barrel, if I'm not mistaken on these ones, they're about 280 millimeters to 300 millimeters. Now, with that length, the port's fine. Now, let's say you go to something that's about 400 millimeters, 500 millimeters. Once you get to something that is that length, especially like 500, we recommend you get a non-ported cylinder. Now, usually with cylinders, you don't need to worry about it if you're just going to replace. So let's say I want to do a tight bore barrel in this length. Don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about it. Not a big deal. Now, let's say you want to do a 500 millimeter inner barrel for some reason, which it's a little too long if you ask me. You're going to need a different cylinder port. You're going to need a non-ported one. Don't usually worry about it, but just kind of want to show you guys that's what that is right there, that hole that allows the maximum amount of air to get through so you get the maximum FPS, maximum range, and allows you to get a consistent accuracy and range with all that included. All right, I'm going to put the barrel back in. If you guys haven't noticed, my hands are disgusting. This table looks disgusting with all these parts. If you guys are doing this, don't be wearing your church shirt and thinking this is a good idea. It's not. Make sure you're wearing something you are willing to get dirty in. I come to work in a t-shirt and pants every day. I'm wearing my apron because this is disgusting. It's just dirty. It happens. All right, so we're going to go over some more stuff in here. So if you look into here, we've got, like I was saying before, the mechanical safety. What that does, excuse me, what the mechanical safety does is it allows it to go to safe, like I showed you before. I was talking about the cutoff lever. That's what this is right here. Now, on the cutoff lever, I'm going to kind of clean this up a little bit so you can kind of see. This right here, you know what? If you guys give me 1 second, I'll be right back. We're going to go get some paper towels, and so I can clean this up for you guys. We're back. All right. Okay, so, and I brought some lithium grease with me, and now we'll re-grease it and kind of show you. Alrighty, so, because I don't like how dirty this is, and it doesn't really help you guys see what I'm talking about, clean this up a little bit. Alright, cleaning all that up. And again, I'm just cleaning because I'm crazy. Alrighty, so, wiping these down real quick. Alrighty, so what I was talking about right here on the cutoff lever, and a few things that'll happen, people say, well, I'm only getting semi, or I'm only getting full auto on semi. What happens is right here, this gets worn. As that wears down, it only will shoot full auto, or it may do a 2-round burst in semi. That happens just because that material going away. The other reason that may happen is this piece sitting right here on the
trigger housing may go out as well. So those two reasons kind of gives you an idea why something might happen like that. Oh. Alrighty, so I'm going to clean this out a little bit because that's nasty. That is nasty. So this maintenance, cleaning out your gearbox, it really shouldn't say it's not necessary, but unless you have a bunch of upgrades in it or you're just wanting to make it go nuts and you want it to be faster, then you would clean it. Otherwise, don't worry about it. Alrighty. So we're going to reassemble this now. Everything looks okay. Again, we're not testing for functionality. I don't even know if this thing's going to work again. Honestly, with this correct gearbox shell, I wouldn't put it back into circulation, but we have it. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do, what you're going to do is you're going to put this back together. It goes in just like that. And this is, again, is a trigger housing. Set it in here. And this is another important part. When you guys are putting wiring in, make sure you set that wiring out of the way of this opening. Otherwise, you're going to tear your wires up, and that sucks. So you have to replace the wires if that happens usually. So that's in there. I'm going to wait to put the trigger in because the trigger, I usually put in last because if it pops out, it's just a hassle to deal with. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the, what you guys say this was, a spur gear. We're going to put the spur gear in. All right, so spur gear goes right here. You're going to spin it, make sure it's all good. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. On the trigger housing, make sure you put the shuttle spring onto this post. And speaking of posts, one of the most common things again that most people say, well, I broke a trigger post. What that is, if you look right here, see this little post? That snaps off. When that snaps off, there's one of two things you can do. Replace the gearbox shell, which can be expensive, or you drill it out and you make your own trigger post. That's what we usually do. Excuse me. It's usually cheaper and it doesn't look as nice, but it works. So that's one thing there. Also with the trigger housing and wiring, you want to make sure you put the screw back in there. Otherwise it can cause some issues. Not usually, but can. Alright, so that's back together right there. Got that all in there. Now, you saw where I pulled this shim out. I dropped this shim, and I know where it was, but let's just say for the sake of argument, I don't know where the shim went. Best bet is to just check on the bottoms of them. So you look here, there's no shims. There's just no shims. Okay, now, in another world where G&G wasn't the apparently godsend of a gearbox and couldn't withstand the weirdest things, I would say shim this gearbox. But it's G&G, and we know they run either without shims or with shims. So for this being a rental, and granted it's not a customer gun, so I'm not going to reshim it. If it was a customer gun, I would probably say let's reshim it. Now, if I put it back together and I have issues or it's just grinding really bad, yeah, we'll go ahead and reshim it. But it looks fine, and not to mention it's got a broken front end, so I think this is the least of our issues right now. So we got the sector gear in there. We got the spur gear in there. Next thing I'm going to do is the anti-reversal latch. Now, I didn't really explain this as much. I just pulled it. Now, with the anti-reversal latch, there's a couple things to know. When you reinstall it, make sure you still have this spring on here. This spring is the difference between my gun sounds good and why does it sound like my gun's reverse spinning. So just keep that in mind. You're going to just set it in like this. And then you take the bevel. Yes. Sorry, I always forget the names. Put it down here and give it a little bit of spin. It only spins one way. Now when I watch as I spin the spin. Let's go the other way. We can't. The reason that is there's another on the top of those other set of gears. There's another area that the anti-reversal latch that allows it not to reverse. So pretty basic there. We're just gonna get it. And before I put anything else in, you want to get the gears out of the way so they don't cause an issue. I would just say you want to get the teeth out of the way so they don't cause an issue. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the piston, clean it up because again it looks disgusting. Clean the cylinder up because again it looks disgusting. A little bit of cleaning on the nozzle here. And on the cylinder head, we're going to clean this up. Alright, and bear with me guys, I know this video is a long one, but you know what? This is some good information for you guys, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to always send me an email, come in, whatever. I'll have Nate put my email on here for any questions regarding anything, or if anything, it's just Jawsh at VIP Airsoft. So pretty basic. So this is going to be a little bit difficult to put back together because of this broken front end. Because these two, move that out of the way, these two holes right here line up. So this one goes here, and the other one lines up on the other side. So this may be a little bit difficult putting it back together, but we're not going to worry about it at this moment. You know what? I should probably put the top plate in because otherwise we're not feeding anything. So we'll set this into here. Oh, excuse me, guys. Again, and then we're going to take that and put it right there. All right, take the spring, put it in there. We're going to set it all in. It's all set nicely. And this is where it's going to get difficult because I have to spring tension this, but I have to make sure it doesn't slide forward too much. So what I recommend, if you ever have a broken gearbox shell, don't try and put it back together. And see, it's causing me issues already. So let's try this. If this becomes too much of an issue, we're just going to say, oh well, and we'll just grab a different gearbox shell at some point. So set it there. So this contraption of silliness of me putting this back together, we'll find out. So it goes in like that. That's how that sets. And you kind of want to make sure everything sets down. Right now, it's all kind of set and high. So this is actually a lot harder than it should be. So you know what? For the sake of argument, and we're not caring if this works, we're just going to pull the spring out. All right? So the spring would set in there normally. So next thing we're going to do, so you're going to put the trigger in. And the way I did that is you teeter it off the front, pull it back, and then it sets. Now, if I couldn't get that spring in and get it set, I sure ain't getting this in. So, for the sake of argument, I'll put it back together without this. Or, sorry, without this. So, without the spring. And one more thing I'm gonna go over with you guys. This spring guide, there's a lot of people that get questions. What if I put a ball bearing spring guide on top of, instead of my normal one? Well, what are you trying to accomplish? Ball bearing spring guide gives you a little bit of FPS up. Other than that, I haven't really seen a reason why to do it. So if you're wanting a little bit of bump in FPS, and I'm talking maybe 5, 10 FPS, maybe a ball bearing spring guide will give that. If you're wanting a nicer spring guide for some reason, maybe, let's say this one broke. I don't know how you broke it, but you broke it. Or you lost this. Or you're playing, let's find the spring guide in the tech room because we like to launch them all over the place. Yeah, it doesn't happen that often, but it does. It does. Anyway, so if you're wanting another spring guide, yeah, you can go ahead and go with the ball bearing one. Just keep in mind when you go with the ball bearing spring guide, you're going to up your FPS, like I said, maybe 5 or 10. And you got to make sure that the spring still sits on here fine and doesn't interfere with the cycling. Because sometimes what happens, and this is when we play catch my spring guide or my piston, is this gets compressed so much down into here that what happens is that it actually gets stuck. So just keep that in mind when you're going with a spring guide setup. Alrighty, so we're gonna put this back together. I'm just gonna set it on here, and I almost forgot my bushing. And you know what? That looks disgusting too. Oh, I found another shim. Alright, we're putting it on there. And I almost forgot like the most important part, you know, some more grease. So, whenever you're using grease, don't use too much. So, I'm gonna put a little bit on my finger, set it on the gears. That's all I'm gonna do. Now, because I did this backwards, make sure you don't mess up the, or get the anti-reversal latch to pop up. Otherwise, you're gonna be reversing all of your shots. And your anti-reversal latch will not do the job it's designed for. So, the next thing you're gonna do, what you normally would do would be holding this spring guide down, holding tension down, but because I can't, because you know the front of the gearbox shell is cracked, what we're gonna do is, we're just gonna set this onto here, and you're gonna line it up. Now, that was a pretty decent lineup to start off with. If it ever gets to where it's not lining up, what you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of push on the sides of the gearbox and the top, and kind of get everything down. So I got it to tighten, and I heard it click. So, what I'm gonna do now is reassemble it, get it all back together. We don't need to show you guys how to do that. You saw how I pulled it apart. Just a real quick thing, guys. If you have any gearbox issues and you've never opened up a gearbox I shouldn't say I don't recommend, but I don't recommend you opening it up if you've never done it. If you are mechanically inclined, you're like, all right, I think I can do this, it doesn't look too difficult, go ahead by all means. Just remember that if you don't know what you're doing, take it to someone who does. We know what we're doing. We do this almost every day. It's pretty easy to do for us, but I mean, we get our situations where it stumps us. Just bring it in, and if you have a question and you're like, hey, I don't know where this goes, we can always tell you. Hey, it goes right here. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Or why is it doing this? We can always answer questions for you. That's why we're here. So again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to give us a call. Come on in. Go ahead and shoot me an email. Shoot Ben an email. My email again is josh@vipairsoft.net. Ben's email is ben@vipairsoft.net. If neither one of us are responding because for some reason we're not in, we'll get a message. We'll find out. Other than that, guys, if you guys have any questions, like I said, just send us an email, come in, give us a call. Other than that, guys, have a great day.